It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Monday. Gary, how are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Hanging in there. How's everybody? No answer. Not good, huh? Okay.
Usually the audience doesn't answer back. Yeah.
Well, you could have responded and said you're doing okay.
Oh,
you were included
Who cares how I'm doing?
I do. I care.
We're the station that cares.
Exactly. We're
Yeah,
the station
nobody
that
cares.
So
we don't care.
So apparently it wasn't a trade deal with China. And by the way, everybody knew it. You don't do a trade deal in 2 days. Trade deals are so complicated. You have hundreds of thousands of moving parts in it. So when I heard it was a trade deal, I went, what's this going to be by the end of the day? And then you had Besson come out. And that was after the U.S. Trade Representative Greer came out and said there's a deal. And then Besson came out and said, well, we're making progress. And then China said the two sides agreed on establishing a consultation mechanism for trade and economic issues, identifying the lead persons on each side, and will carry on further consultations relating to trade and economic issues of their respective concerns. I took everything that has been said over the last couple of days and said there is now a consensus to have an equilibrium framework on negotiations protocol.
Yeah, blueprint framework.
Well,
we'll add a new word to it.
Well, what it seems like it is, again, because you say, well, what's going on? And anybody who's ever had a contract in business, for example, if you have a contract, a lot of contracts have a negotiations protocol where you sign a contract, and in that contract, there's a protocol of how you will negotiate the next contract. And it's in the contract that you sign. That there's a certain protocol to set up who is going to be negotiating it and how you will do it at that particular point. For example, management may designate somebody who would negotiate it, and that's in your contract, your previous contract for the next contract. And so that's done quite often. It seems like probably at least they've gotten to that point.
I think the fact that Xi sent top representatives from China meant that they were going to have to set the table, because they were going to have to, of course, everything's going to be, you're going to be there representing directly what Xi wants. But from China's perspective, they needed to make things, I think, very clear and not have any miscommunication along the way as to what this was going to be and what it was going to take. Now, the question is, what does that mean for each side? I don't think we'll have a solid trade deal for years with China, if we ever do. I think you can come to agreements where you enact policy and say, okay, this is going to be the case, then you enforce it in these ways. There was a great concern with Trump coming into his second term that the Biden administration had not been enforcing some of the tariffs that Trump put in place in his first term. Now, I don't know whatever came of that. They were looking into that. The second Trump administration was looking into that. But each administration can decide what they want to enforce, what there's going to be, and you can move it on the fly. We've seen that happening with Trump in his second term. So I don't really expect a long-term cement trade deal with China.
Yeah, you don't get the trade deal until Congress approves it.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I don't expect it. I mean, I just don't expect there to be, I guess what most people would expect in a trade deal. You can have business being conducted that goes on and stays at a certain level for the longest time, as long as it's benefiting either side economically or politically or both. Well, now you have a situation where nobody trusts anything coming out of China. Whatever China says, it's worth nothing. And nobody knows what this administration wants. So everybody's really waiting for the effect of whatever's going to happen to actually become reality. And so I didn't see anything on Sunday. I know the markets are in the pre-markets in positive territory for Monday, anticipating what Besant might say on Monday morning. I don't really expect anything groundbreaking. It could be what they were, the president floating, we'll drop the tariffs on Friday. We should drop the tariffs to 80%. The market went, 80% is still a lot. Because the word had gotten out on our Thursday night, Friday morning show. We talked about it late Thursday, that it could be 50% and as early as sometime this week. It could drop to 50%. And I thought, is he throwing the 80% out there as the trial balloon and then wanting to pop the market with an announcement on Monday morning that we're going to drop it to 50% as long as everybody's at the table, or 25%. I don't know what the magic number is. 80% isn't magic. It's far from magic. And the market on Friday was like, yeah, no, that's not what we're looking for. The entire world after the UK deal, everybody's, the entire economic world was looking for, and I said this before the UK deal was announced. Everybody was, all right. Yeah, but what about China? What about China? Yeah, but what about China? Yeah, but what about China? Meeting with the new Prime Minister of Canada. Yeah, but what about China? Yeah, but what about China? And everybody is greatly anticipating something with teeth, a big move on China, because China's tariffs were such a big move. So they're waiting for whatever that rebound move is going to be.
I think that, and it's interesting because I think the best sell for the White House would not be on the trade deficit. I mean, politically, how do you sell it? I think it would be, I saw the numbers today, and again, I don't know. It made me, I was so busy. My plane was late. I was on it was a heck of a day yesterday, so I didn't get to do the research I wanted to do.
And you didn't even have to fly through Newark.
Or Atlanta. No, I just went from no, mine was, if the guy in front of me was throwing a fit. What happened was one flight attendant got sick. Mm-hmm. And, you're not when you're in Buffalo, you're not in a hub.
Right. Yeah.
So they had to fly. It was because the hubs really where they have, flight attendants or crew is Chicago, Dallas, and Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And so one flight attendant got sick. Mm-hmm. And I'm in my hotel, and 2 a.m, I can see I wake up and I'm looking, and I had a 6:30 flight out. And in the morning, so I'm looking to see the light blinking. I'm like, oh no! Mm-hmm. And it was like, your plane's been delayed. So immediately I called to try to get a different flight, which I'd have to connect. And they suggested no. They said, look, it's a crew thing. Mm-hmm. And what I found out later on, it was one flight attendant who got sick. Mm-hmm. So they had to wait. They could, even though there were planes coming in from Buffalo to Buffalo from Philly and New York, whatever. It's not a hub where they have flight attendants. So you had to wait till a flight came in from Chicago, which was 4 hours, later at 10 o'clock. And then that flight attendant got right off the gate. We saw her get off the gate and walk right down. It was a gate next to us and get on the plane. So we didn't leave till, probably we didn't get out of there till close to 11 o'clock, which means by the time I got settled back at home, I got home, had to call everybody very quickly and wish them Happy Mother's Day. And then I went to sleep and woke up. But when I saw a figure yesterday that the stealing, the intellectual property stealing,
right,
from China cost us $500 to $800 billion a year. No, it said 500 to 800 billion. They didn't have a time segment on it.
Right.
And I went, well, that's the best thing to sell against China.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of figure and say, this isn't about a trade deficit, they're stealing, that to me resonates. Can I start over again? Can I have a cocktail?
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Can I have a cocktail or something?
All I got is yogurt. So
I don't think alcohol's going to hurt me right now. Yeah. I just thought that when I saw that, I go, they should really be selling it that way. But obviously, what's going on here is they're trying to keep the stock market up.
Yeah,
right. And the anticipation, and I don't know whether this is true, but what we saw a couple of weeks ago is if stuff starts getting scarce on the shelves, it's going to be between now and the end of the month.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do everything to probably keep the flow of goods coming. And I think that probably will be something. I think the administration, I think everything that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, the administration understands, and they're backtracking on it. And I think that, because I saw over the weekend, well, no matter what, there's going to be the 10% across the board tariff. I think they're trying to find a number of tariffs that is so low that they can promote that we have these tariffs on, even if the other country tariffs us. You can sit there and say, we've got the victory, we've tariffed, and then it goes back, things go back to normal.
It's what I've been saying for a long time, and you and I were having a discussion. I don't know if we mentioned it on the air, but during the show, one of the shows last week, I was telling you, it's like they're looking for the Laffer curve of tariff amounts, right?
Right.
Of having the amount that you can get away with still doing your victory lap, still showing, okay, this increases revenue. We're going to have so much money, we don't know what to do with it, that thing. And then, but also, being tough on other countries, but also not crushing prices. And that's why you see so many exemptions put in for certain products. 10% on a car is a big deal. 10% on, other tiny widgets.
On dolls.
Yeah, on dolls. Not such a big deal. Right. Those are the things where you want to look at it and say, okay, all right. Because if there isn't the problem that they've had, I said this a while back, the problem you have is not just the price, whatever, the price point is going to be, that impact. It's that if things start not appearing on shelves, if you have empty spaces on shelves, the psychology, we can have the debate whether or not it's reasonable to think this, it doesn't matter. It's the truth. We saw it with toilet paper in COVID, and there never really was a toilet paper shortage. People lose their minds because they start thinking, oh my gosh, we're not going to get these things. If I can't get these things today, we're not going to be able to get these things. Oh, wait a minute. If we can't get these things, we're not going to be able to get other things. This is how people reacted in COVID. Now, you talk about an entire global supply chain, but especially China, because of the overwhelming amount of items, individual items, they send over. Well, if there are, again, any spaces on shelves, people will start to freak out because in their mind it's, wait a minute, prices are high. There's this stuff that isn't showing up. What's next? The other stuff on the shelves that I'm going to need isn't going to show up. They start overbuying, stocking up, building warehouses to put all their toilet paper in, and this is how they respond. Again, whether it's reasonable or not, it's how the psychology works if you have gaps in the supply chain.
Yeah, as I refer to it as crap panic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
you're going to lose your mind over something because you think it's not going to be there tomorrow. And you think, okay, if that space is empty, what else are we not going to be able to get? All of a sudden, you're buying up everything, and it's not just toilet paper.
And what drives it really isn't even the national news focus. We've talked about this before. for example, illegal immigration. I believe what really pushed that over the top to help Trump win was the local news coverage.
Yeah.
And it's a local news coverage because they've got nothing to talk about except, hey, the toilet paper in, I don't know, whatever supermarket, super duper groceries, whatever, is, half the shelves are empty. Even if it's only one aisle, they go in and go, look at how empty it is. Why? Because they got nothing else to talk about.
Right.
And it's something that's local and affects people right there.
Right.
It's a local news coverage that actually, I think, at times drives that panic.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Hey there, Hope Savara here with Mother Trucker Yoga, and this is your health tip of the day. Healthy driver, healthy diesel, powered by House. Neck strain can really be a pain, especially after long hours behind the wheel. Did you know neck pain affects nearly 70% of drivers at some point in their career? So let's loosen things up. Sit tall and tip your head to your right shoulder. Now pull your left shoulder down gently and hold for 10 seconds. Switch sides, left ear to left shoulder, right shoulder pulls down and hold for 10. Now roll your shoulders 5 big circles forward and 5 back. Open your mouth wide and stretch your jaw. Hold for 10. Close and repeat that 2 more times. Finally, take a deep breath in through your nose, pause, and exhale through your mouth. There you go. Small, simple changes lead to big results so that you can feel good again. Visit mothertruckeryoga.com and houseproducts.com for more info.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. Like I said last week after the England deal, I went, okay, they're starting on the right path. All right, and that's good. And it seems to be that Besant is having more influence, sort of like Kudlick and Steve Moore did in the last administration. And it looks like Navarro isn't having as much impact on it. But with China, we all knew. I mean, anybody who pays attention or knows anything about trade deals, you don't get a trade deal done in 2 days. You don't get a trade deal done in 20 hours of negotiations. But if they're talking and they just keep extending it, and I really do believe, because you keep hearing that 10% is going to stay, that 10% is going to stay. Well, 10% tariffs aren't 50%.
Right.
10% tariffs. And there's going to be exceptions, as we know, across the board. But it seems like there was a recognition, and I mentioned it last week. It was Bill O'Reilly who said he actually believes that the president was completely blown away by the stock market reaction to, the initial tariff announcement. That he had no idea it would have that kind of economic impact on the stock market.
Yeah, and didn't he mention the bond markets too?
And the bond markets too. Yeah, the stock market and the bond. Thank you for throwing that in there.
Yeah. It's and I it's hard to know, but it appears that he didn't anticipate that, given, especially on the bond market thing, the fact that Besant, several senators from the GOP, all seemingly pointed something out to him the night before he announced the drop to 10% across the board. That's indicative of him learning something, which means he didn't know it before.
I like how you explain it, though. It's sort of like 10% might be the Laffer curve
Right,
of tariffs.
Of tariffs, right, yeah.
And we'll explain that coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Unidad America Studios.
It's Friday Radio. He's our Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, big picture time. Monday morning, big picture time. All right. And whenever I travel for the weekend, it seems like a year goes by the time we get to Monday from Friday's show.
Yeah.
It really does. It's like, wow.
Yeah, when I was mentioning that Trump on Friday was talking 80%, dropping the tariffs on China to 80%, that seems like it was a month ago.
Well, what about the three Democrats and the mayor?
Oh my gosh!
You going to
breaking
the
into
to the
ICE detention center,
right? And I here's a headline here: Democratic Representative McIver, I did not body slam anyone. ICE created that confrontation. What do you mean? You showed up there demanding that you get in,
right?
And I mean, I just was and. I think I read that on the plane.
Yeah.
Going there. And I'm just like, this is such a great opportunity for Republicans.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think ICE did a pretty good job when they said if they wanted to tour the facility, all they had to do was call us and set it up.
Right. Make an appointment and you can come in and see it.
We'll do it anytime. Just call us ahead of time and make the appointment.
Right. And so that disappeared quick, except for the fact that the one congressperson is, on there on CNN saying, I did not body slam an ICE. And I'm like, this is just fantastic for Republicans. And, whether it's the budget, and, you and I are talking about the budget, and now you saw the concern over the weekend. It's like, are Republicans actually putting together a tax plan that will help boost the economy? Or are they picking out particular demographics that they simply want to vote to hopefully have them vote for them in the midterms? And so it's not about the best tax cuts out there, and it's not about doing what conservatives want, and it's not even about pro-growth. It's about, how to reward certain
cherry picking,
demographics out there, and are they really going to cut? And I think it was the Wall Street Journal, the great shrinking. The great, whatever that movie is or whatever, the great shrinking tax cuts that now Johnson's saying, well, $4.5 trillion to $4 trillion. And it's like, they know they can't blow up. Well, I don't know if they know that. They are concerned about blowing up the deficit after Doge. And it's everything that we talked about seems to be the concerns of the Republicans now. But the big picture is when you see everything that's happened over the weekend, I mean, Republicans have a chance to, and I think hopefully Trump recognizes this now. I read an article where Democrats are saying Trump is obsessed with winning the midterms. I hope so.
Yeah. Yes.
I hope so. And because when you see the Democrats, I was looking at a thing where this came out late last week where AOC's is being screamed at. People are going crazy at her town hall meetings. Yeah, and these are liberals. Right. This isn't, for example, Republicans invading her space.
Right.
There was one, was it a Bernie Sanders? There was one Republican that was at one of them. I forgot what it was late last week. But these are radical Democrats that are just furious as to what's going on. And then you've got Biden out there. And over the weekend, Biden, go away. We don't want to hear from you. Go away, go away, go away. And so he's out there, and then Harris is out there, and then AOC is out there, and then Bernie Sanders is out there. What, you think I'm going to wait in line? Yeah. I'm going to wait in line at an airport? I'm not a peon like you. I'm Bernie Sanders.
I don't eat ketchup.
I think it was... Only Grey Poupon. I think it was Babylon Bee that said Bernie Sanders buys a fourth home to keep a rich person from getting it.
Exactly. That's great.
And so, I mean, it's the opportunity, and I just hope the Republicans don't throw it away. They have this incredible opportunity to lead for years because the Democrats aren't going to change.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I look at everything that's going on, and there's a great opportunity for the president. Look, I think if they announce tomorrow that we're sitting down and we've got the parameters for a negotiation and we've already made some inroads, just sitting down with China and having consistent talks day in and day out, even if they don't get anywhere, still is good. Yeah. Because it soothes the market saying the negotiations are always going on, the negotiations are always going on, the negotiations are always going on. Right. And we're slowly working at this, and we've lowered this tariff, and we've done this, and we've done that, because we know that the president is concerned about where the stock market went, where the bond market went. How do we know this? By his behavior, by how the announcement, not necessarily what he says every day, but the behavior of what he does by the end of each week.
Yeah, it's really the collective actions. You're right. I was going to say it seems to be weekly trends right now. And we've seen that where over the last couple of weeks especially, it's been about soothing the markets, giving the markets something to basically temper the concerns or the uncertainty. I think there's still a great deal of uncertainty. I think that's why you're not seeing a massive pop on anything that Ambassador Greer said. First of all, when I saw that, I was like, why isn't anybody else saying the word deal? Why isn't anybody else? I first saw it, by the way, in the New York Post. And then it started to get out, and Bessent, had made the comment of the talks were productive. We're going to make an announcement on Monday. And you and I don't expect much. We wait and see, even on the words, what the actions are going to be. But when you say you're going to make an announcement Monday, that something is, you're going to speak on something Monday, then everybody's waiting on the words.
And by the way, China said there's be a joint statement.
Yeah. So it's likely going to be, what I expect. I don't know what's likely, but it's what I expect it to be. It's what I've always expected. A blah, 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 framework, good for both sides, blah, 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 everybody happy, blah, 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 we're working on it, blah, 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 framework, blah, 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 blueprint, blah, 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 both sides, blah, 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 growing economy.
Or this, Rapid Response 47 put this out yesterday. Okay, Lutnick, this is a quote from Lutnick.
Yeah.
Rapid Response 47, by the way, is the official White House response to anything that happens.
Right.
In fact, if the opposition says something, you go to Rapid Response 47, and you can sit there and go, okay, because if it's false, Rapid Response 47 will be on it like this, and if they don't respond, then you go, okay, what's going on?
Right.
That's how you know. Plus, Truth Social too, the president will react immediately if he believes he has a solid point against any criticism. But Howard Lutnick, they have this quote: "We're going to have our shelves full of wonderful products made around the world. We're also going to make sure that their shelves, that American products are finally given their fair treatment that they deserve." President said last week, everything has to be made in the United States. Yeah. We knew, he said that. We went, well, he can't deliver that, but he said it. But it's like, okay. And then they said this, but what are they actually doing? All the products are not going to be made in the United States. That's not going to happen.
Right.
We're not going to have equal trade with every country. That's not going to happen. That's impossible.
If China ends up buying more from the U.S., great. There's your victory lap. Take your victory lap. I'm good with that. I really don't. I was going to say I don't care. I do care. It is something to celebrate. But again, let the effect of it do all the heavy lifting for you. Yeah. And the effect will be no bare spots on the shelves. Prices not jumping in any real significant manner. If they settle somewhere, I don't know with China if it's going to be 10%. But the president said after the UK deal, he said 10% is the floor. That's as low as it's going to get. Well, until it's not.
Until it's not.
But let's say it is. Let's say 10% is where they settle. All right. Then again, if we're talking widgets, that's one thing. But you carve out some exceptions with things like larger ticket items, because, again, it's all about price point. You can say, call it a tax, call it whatever you want to call it, but when an importer is charged something, that charge is passed on to the consumers who buy those products. That's how it works. That's basic economics. It's always been that way, and that's a fact. Now, there is, I think, this what I call the Laffer curve of tariff.
I like this.
It's where's that happy medium point where you can do your victory lap, you can increase, because if the goal is, in part, increase the revenue stream to the government, okay, well, all right, you get some of that. Depending on how the consumer ultimately responds, if they quit buying those tariffed items as much, then that's not going to be a great increase on those on that revenue. But anyway, if they found that happy medium where it really doesn't curb to a large degree the consumption of imported products by American consumers, then okay, you get to do your victory lap on increased revenue.
Well,
and down the road, you can show that when that revenue stream is increased directly by tariffs.
But the other side, I could see him going, okay, we're going to make it 5%, then both sides do 5%.
Could be.
Because that's the point. Just because if America does 10%, you're going to have a ton of other countries do 10% back.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we've decided to lower it from 10% each to 5% each.
And
then you're playing around the margins, but you're not trying to make an economic point. You're trying to make a political point that we're being tough on them. But the result is, to me, it would be a political point. But I could see that happening, and I don't wish it to happen because I don't want a tariff for a political point. But if you think that we're going to have trade equality, it's like somebody posted Milton Friedman over the weekend saying, "What are you talking about? We have a huge capital surplus. Forget about a good surplus. We have a capital surplus."
Right.
But that's the whole point. Right now, a lot of Americans don't want to hear that, because when we talk about trade, it's like we've gone through the point. If Trump believes, and he believes that if I buy a car from you, I get the car, they get the piece of paper, that the person who gets the piece of paper wins that deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic concept of a protectionist.
Right.
Well, that's not true.
Right.
There's a lot of, as we talked about Great Britain last week. We have a huge, for example, service surplus with Great Britain. And so we have a huge surplus on services with many countries. But it's the belief, and we've gone through the whole economic process of when they get that piece of paper. But you've actually got a car. They got a piece of paper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what it is. The piece of paper has to be worth something, which means they only take the piece of paper if they can eventually get a good or service from you or invest in your country, in your businesses, in order to be able to get more American dollars and then buy a good or service down the road. Otherwise, the dollar collapses.
Right. Yeah.
That's why the ruble hasn't been worth anything for such a long time. They don't produce anything.
They don't produce anything
that the world wants.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I just love it to see this headline, Donna Brazil. I think Disney will skip gay days at Abu Dhabi Park.
Well, you think?
I'm just reading the headlines itself. This is like the Babylon Bee. All I got to do is read the headlines.
Yeah.
Here's another report. Dems want Biden out of the spotlight.
I mean, of all the times to call a lid, permanently. It's now.
He's going to be more active now than he was when he was in the White House.
He took more time off when he was president.
An article that I read on polls that talks about exactly what you and I have said in the past. You have to ask follow-up questions when you do a poll.
Yeah.
It's something that you and I have talked about before.
Well, we want to ask qualifying questions for the respondents.
Right. Well, this is sort of the follow-up questions, which is, for example, is climate change a problem? Yes. And they go, but then you need to ask the follow-up. Would you spend $1 to stop the problem? No. Then they really don't care about climate change.
It's not a problem.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right. This is our YouTube Exist segment.
Yes.
And just happened to be scanning a bunch of different things on social media, and I found this one from Bill Maher. Recently had the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe on, and talking about, and this goes back, I think, to the last part of April when the op-ed piece that Larry David wrote and said, Bill Maher had dinner with Hitler, right, with Trump. So here's this little back and forth. Okay, here we go. All right.
Larry David said, I'm a Nazi.
He did?
Well, he said I had dinner with Hitler.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and by the way, and I think literally when we say we do it to themselves, how dare anyone call Trump Hitler? That is such an insult to the Jewish people.
That's exactly what I said when I did an interview about it, that it's like, among other things, first of all, as soon as you play the Hitler card, you've kind of lost the argument unless you're really dealing with Hitler.
Okay, there you go. All right. Now, all right, let us go back. This goes back to 8 years ago, all right, when Trump first was in office.
Okay.
And Bill, now I couldn't find the one. I was looking for the audio cut. I haven't found that one yet. The one where he said, Romney and Bush.
Bush, McCain.
Bush and Romney, we called Hitler. They really weren't. Trump wasn't. Now, he told that as a joke.
Right,
but he goes, but Trump is, or whatever. But here's where he's talking about fascists. Listen to this. And he's talking about Trump. Here we go. Basically, the country is lost because Trump's a fascist. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, hang on here. It was working. And
also, once fascists get power, they don't give it up. You've got President Trump for life. I know liberals made a big mistake because we attacked your boy Bush like he was the end of the world, and he wasn't. And Mitt Romney, we attacked that way. I gave Obama $1 million to throw afraid of Mitt Romney.
There you go. But there he is where I got to cut it off because he starts cursing in there. But there it is. Trump.
Yeah, right. He's a real fascist.
He's a real fascist, right? So the fact is, and that's why we've always said, don't believe Bill Maher.
Right.
Bill Maher's just going where the public is going, where the public is frustrated with it, and it's not politically effective for the Democrats, and so Bill Maher's coming out. He pretends that what happened before and the opinions he held before, to sit there and say, Trump's a Hitler, Trump's fascist, and now sit there and criticize the Democrats when he used that when he thought it was commercially viable for his show.
Right. Yep.
You don't reverse things like that. You don't sit there. If I ever said that somebody is actually Hitler-like, they would have to be involved in genocide. And therefore, I would never have to retract it or never have to pretend I didn't say it.
Right. Yeah. It's, again, going wherever the wind is going on this. And he sees, if I had heard something from Bill Maher, and I haven't, that, hey, I've been part of it in comparing him to Hitler in the past.
Yeah.
And after October 7th, all of that needs to end.
That would be fine.
That's up for the public to accept, whether they do or not accept it. They can decide that. That you get away with at that point going, but let's get down to brass tacks here. Let's call this what it is. And we need to quit calling him Hitler. We need to quit using that. If there's been that change of heart, I haven't heard him say it. Because he's used it in the past. And it's what we have talked about with many on the left. Bill's not an independent. He's on the left. And like many on the left, he's very unhappy with how radical the party is becoming.
Well, I don't know if he's upset because they become radical. I think he's upset that the American public hasn't bought it.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the possibilities.
Right. So it's one of those tactics you use to, I don't know, stay in the middle. Wherever the wind is blowing. He's never going to leave office. He's really a fascist. He's the real deal when it comes to fascism. Well, when you're saying that, you're saying he's capable of doing what Hitler did.
Yeah. And we said that a long time ago, by the way.
Yeah.
We said when you call somebody
you're
Hitler,
building fear.
What you're saying is they had the capability of committing genocide against millions of people.
Right. Right.
And that means rounding them up. And we even saw this when he was elected.
Well,
I think you still have some Democrats saying, well, expect blacks to be rounded up and gays to be rounded up and transgenders to be rounded up and put in concentration camps. Somebody said it a couple of weeks ago. Who was it?
March 5th, 2016, Bill Maher, real time. I don't sprechen Sie German. I don't speak German. The comic said, so I had one of Hitler's speeches translated into English. And I think this tells us a lot about where Donald Trump is getting his ideas. Don't play innocent, Bill Maher. You're part of it.
Yep.
You want to apologize? Great. I'll let the public decide, anybody who cares, if they accept the apology. But don't pretend like you're not part of it. I think there was a great awakening with many on the left after October 7th, realizing exactly what I said. That after October 7th, there are the radicals on one side and everybody else on the other. And we're seeing it on universities. We're seeing it everywhere. And the Jewish community, I think many in the Jewish community that have voted Democrat for the longest time and supported the left, they're looking at this going, how in the world do we have young people that are pro-Hamas? Well, it's inevitably where it was going to go. They are proud of their anti-Semitism. It is sickening. But part of the building of the fear, including Bill Maher, is on people who use things like that. They want you to believe that Donald Trump is capable of that. All of the atrocities of Adolf Hitler. That's the reason they do it. They need to build the utmost fear of him so that everybody runs away from him. That didn't work in November of 2024.
No.
Because people thankfully, enough people didn't buy it. And for him to get on this high horse, Bill Maher, and pretend like he never had a part in it.
Of course he did.
You were a big part of it, Bill. We don't forget.
And YouTube exists.
And YouTube exists.
And the quotes, like you just brought up.
Yep.
The quotes of news articles exist from what he has said. And that's the point that, there are certain things a few things in my life that I've changed my opinion on. But I've never accused somebody of being able to kill 6 million people and then call it outrageous and pretend I never said the exact same thing and wasn't on the exact same narrative.
Right.
That's not a change of an opinion based on new information.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know that, and therefore
right.
I've evolved on this issue because I have this new information, and I didn't have it before. You could understand it. Bill Maher was a part of the Trump is fascist, Trump is Hitler in his first term.
Yep.
And so this evolution that he's made, he should admit. And that's fine if you say, I was wrong for doing it. I got caught up in the political rhetoric. That's fine if you do that. He's not doing that. He's pretending as if he never held that opinion before.
Right.
Which shows to me...
And that everybody else doing it is wrong.
Right.
And he was never in that group.
Right. Wrong. It's outrageous that they would do something like that.
I would never. Yeah, you would. We saw you do it in the campaign season of 2016, Bill.
And even after, when he became president, because the one I played with fascists, that's when he was... Basically, the election's over. That's what you got. You got, you got a fascist for life.
He's not going to leave.
Right. He was throwing as much paranoia in there, like the fascist is there and isn't going to leave. He's going to stay in office. We're in a dictatorship now. Shut up.
Where they truly believe they capitalize on it is that they have people that they know that are out there that don't personally like Trump. Especially in the first term or 2016, back when he was much more active on then Twitter. And they didn't like the way he talked. They didn't like the way he, anything about the guy. It was, of course, quite the opposite with them, much like Elon Musk. When Donald Trump was not a Republican officially and wasn't running for president, he was a great celebrity. They celebrated him. They wanted more of him. In fact, they kept asking if he was going to run
for president. We need somebody like you. This is the left.
And so people, including Bill Maher, and building out these lies to build the fear. Leading up to 2016, they did it, as you said, they've done it since. They're still doing it today. They're burning EVs on the left because Elon Musk supports Trump, who they call Hitler. Now Elon Musk is a Nazi. This is who they are. They've got to build the ultimate fear because they can't debate the issues. You can say, I think he's wrong here, or I don't know, as I would with a Democrat. I can't imagine me agreeing with anything that they do. But all of these things escape them because they don't have a point to debate.
There's a difference between saying you believe in fiscal socialism than you would commit, versus capitalism, which, again, has been mainstream, as we've talked about. Socialist fiscal policy from politicians in the United States has been going on since the beginning.
Yeah.
And, so you're talking about, pure capitalism versus pure socialism versus somewhere in between, and people holding those fiscal opinions on that. That's different than using the word Hitler, fascist, or Nazi, which is not, to most people, viewed as a different economic system run by a dictator,
Right.
which it would be anyway, but it's the part of the genocide.
Right.
They want to throw the ultimate panic in that there's going to be genocide. And that was done by liberals after Trump won again.
Yep.
Get ready for people to be rounded up.
Yep. They're trying to make you believe that he's doing that now with gang members.
Illegal immigrant gang members. Well, see, we told you it was going to happen.
Yep.
No. You're talking about minority demographic American citizens.
Right.
Don't try to change it. And don't try to make the case that it's the same thing.
That which is really what they're implying, that it is indeed the same thing. But make no mistake, Bill Maher was a part of this. He can deny it now, but we have good memories, and we also have YouTube.
If he denied it, then at least he could be called on it. He's just pretending it didn't exist.
Exactly.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company. But there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Again, it's just so many different audio cuts out there. This one, completely different topic, but this is on the radical transgender movement. This is a New York Times reporter asking Senator Chris Murphy if he supports males being able to compete on girls' sports teams. Watch him trying to avoid answering this question.
Yeah.
This is why we said earlier, you look at the big picture. This weekend again shows Republicans, the table has been laid out for you.
Yeah.
If you do it right, you can win for the longest time.
Right.
Because Democrats just can't get it together. Here we go.
I don't have any fear of transgender athletes participating in sports, but
wait, just so you don't have any fear of it. Do you think it's if you had a daughter competing against a biological male, would you find it unfair?
I don't have girls, right? So I necessarily can't, right? I can't put myself in that position.
Have some empathy, right, for those of us who do, right? So would you find it unfair?
I mean, I've talked to lots of parents of girls in Connecticut who do not think it's unfair, and who think that the benefits that those athletes get from being part of a team is important, and they don't mind or feel threatened by the competition. I think everybody can come to their own conclusion, but your conclusion is the official line of liberalism right now. It's you're saying you don't. Yes, my conclusion is that I would support those athletes being able to participate in my community, right? In my community, but I would not substitute my judgment and my community's judgment for another community's.
Wow. You know what? That right there is Olympic level gymnastics. Your sister would be impressed with that. Holy. Wow. My gosh.
Republicans, the table is set for you if you want to win.
Yeah.
Don't blow it.
Don't blow it.
You're never going to find a Democrat. You're never going to find a major political party as radical as the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah.
You will never find it. It's never existed in this country to this point and being this radical, except if you want to say when the Democratic Party supported slavery.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah.
But, I mean, the fact is, I don't have every excuse. I don't have daughters, as if I don't have daughters, then I can't make a decision as to whether males.
Who am I? I don't
females.
have daughters. I don't know what it means. I don't know what that means.
And yes, in my community, but not in your community.
Yes.
Wow.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric, I thought in Texas we already passed this bill. Apparently, they did pass this bill a couple of years ago, but it wasn't effective in getting to the goal. You ready for this?
All right.
A bill working its way through the Texas legislature has caused some double takes with language that requires solar plants to provide power in the dark. The state bill passed by the Senate last week, and if adopted by the Texas House, would require any renewable power providers to buy backup power, typically from coal or gas plants, TheHill.com reported. Texas consultant and energy expert Doug Lewin wrote in his analysis of the legislature that the measure would require solar plants to buy backup power to match their output at night at a time when no one expects them to produce energy and when demand is typically at its lowest anyway. Double takes aside, the legislation, by the way, there's no double takes here. Double takes aside, the legislature is part of 3 Republican bills advancing through the state legislature that could offset Texas's green energy progress and give fossil fuels an advantage in the state's energy market. Reason, that's a libertarian publication, Reason reported Texas generates the most renewable energy in the nation. The bill is supported by a conservative think tank called the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which argues that traditional power sources are still needed to make up for the inconsistencies of renewable energy, which is true. Mm-hmm. And this is something that they talked about, building that fund to be able to build, natural gas plants, and it would increase the cost. Basically, you're subsidizing wind and solar, and then you're also subsidizing traditional, the traditional consistent forms of energy, because you're not using them all the time.
Right. They're only used as a backup,
right,
which means they're more expensive, which requires more public money.
Yes. So the insanity continues here in Texas.
Woohoo! What they should do is have a new backup for the backup for the backup. That would be wind and solar. And it would be one big circle created by a bunch of jerks.
Oh, okay. So this would be an energy Coachella band.
Yes. You could totally
an energy
Coachella
system.
band. Exactly.
Okay.
We'll bring in even more wind and solar to back up the backup to the backup. Wow.
Oh, my God.
Holy cow. Gladys Knight didn't have this many backups. This is getting stupid.
These bunch of pips.
There's a bunch of pips. I only wish they were pips. Wow.
I mean, it's
just insane.
It really is. But look, the state of Texas isn't insane that they can't stop the federal government from doing what the federal government is doing, which brings us back again, because the Republicans seem to be politically impotent on this. Get rid of the damn Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
That continues to fund the insanity. They can't do it.
Can't do it.
Oh.
Well, the money, the Green Project money has already poured into a number of red states, too, and politically you can't move it. Then that's as good as voting for it the first time it came up for a vote.
Speaking of the Republicans, not only Trump, but the Republicans might be attacking the Wall Street Journal editorial page.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about, the president's taking off on the Wall Street Journal, remember, there's basically two portions of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
I mentioned this last week. It was last week you were out one day, right? You were saying? Yeah, I mentioned it last week, that there's, and we've talked about it before, there's two. There's the news division, which is more liberal. Then there's the editorial division, which is more conservative.
Right.
But, again, the incredible shrinking GOP tax cut.
Yeah.
Many Republicans have forgotten the principles of pro-growth tax policy. The House Ways and Means Committee will soon release the GOP's first draft of the party's tax proposals, and the irony is that the bill may be getting worse, even as a good bill becomes more urgent. President Trump has pitched a tax rate increase that even Democrats failed to pass, and parochial demands are shrinking the pro-growth value of the bill. Republicans seem to have forgotten the principles of sound tax policy, even the lessons of the successful 2017 reform. Most of the 26 GOP members of the Ways and Means were not in Congress in 2017. The intellectual capital of previous tax writers is missing. The Senate is somewhat better, but still will miss Pat Toomey. Can the good bill be salvaged? Perhaps, but to do so, Republicans will have to relearn the good and bad lessons of the first tax cut, the Bush tax cuts, the Reagan tax cuts, the Kennedy tax cuts, and even going all the way back to the Roaring 20s, the Mellon tax cuts that kicked in way, way back then. Permanent. Number one, people and businesses like certainty so they can have more confidence in making plans. The 2017 bill showed the benefit of making tax law permanent or not. The corporate reform was made permanent for the most part, while the individual tax cuts were not. Republicans are now scrambling to renew the individual cuts before they expire at the end of the year. The Bush tax cut of 2003 made the same mistake and gave Barack Obama the leverage to raise taxes in 2012. A successful reform will make tax changes permanent rather than end in 4, 6, or 8 years. This will make the tax bill more economically potent and politically durable. Treasury Secretary Bessent has been hitting this point, but other Republicans seem to define permanent as lasting to 2028.
Yeah.
Immediate. One lesson of the Reagan tax cuts is that phasing them in is counterproductive. It can lead businesses to postpone investment until the full cut kicks in. The Reagan boom didn't begin until the tax cuts that passed in 81 finally took full force in 83. Republicans are not talking about phase-ins this time around, but it's always possible this idea pops up. Marginal tax rates matter. One lesson to relearn is the difference between marginal and average tax rate. The average tax rate is the tax share of total income. The marginal rate is the tax paid on the next dollar of income. Economists know that the marginal rate matters most for growth because it affects the incentive to work and invest or take risks. The most successful tax cuts of the last 100 years, the Mellon, the Kennedy, and the Reagan cuts, all focused on cutting rates at the margin. The least successful, the Bush cut of 2001, handed out rebates that boosted consumption for a short period, but did little for growth. Trump has floated raising the top marginal tax rate to 39.6% for filers making more than $2.5 million. The foundation says this would affect 175,000 filers. the most likely to invest and take risks in new ventures. Small businesses that pay the individual rate would pay more than corporations. Most damaging would be the GOP surrender to left-wing soak-the-rich economics. If marginal rates don't matter, then why not 50% or 70%? As a nearby chart shows, in 2022, the top 1% paid 40.4% of income tax revenue on 22.4% of reported earnings. The point of low marginal rates isn't to help the already rich, it's to offer incentives for those who want to become rich through investments. And they go lower rates and broader base as long as the U.S. has an income tax. The best tax code has low tax rates spread over a broad base of income. This does the least economic damage as it raises revenue. It reduces for incentives for carve-outs for the politically connected. The 2017 reform did this well on the corporate side, cutting the corporate rate from 21 to from 35% and closing corporate tax loopholes. The individual reform did it less well. The rate cuts were good and at the margin, but the rate cuts were modest. Mr. Trump now wants to shrink the tax base with costly deductions, no tax on tips, Social Security benefits or overtime, plus a write-off for interest on car loans. These help specific groups, but they lose hundreds of billions in revenues, which raises the pressure to keep tax rates high. This is tax reform in reverse. We want growth, not income redistribution. Democrats these days view the tax code as they do spending, a goodie bag to parcel out favors for special interest, credits for EVs, carbon capture, or housing. These credits are a form of income distribution. Through the tax code, they promote investment based on political preferences rather than market returns. This inevitably leads to misallocated capital and slower economic growth. Too many Republicans these days, though, now view the tax code as a form of social spending. Instead of EVs, they want tax credits for families with children or low-income housing. The $2,000 per child tax credit is hugely expensive, $690 billion over 10 years, and does little to spur growth, as numerous studies have shown. And it's right. I mean, the Republicans, too, want to make the tax system a welfare system. That's what Democrats used to do. We're against it. We have been.
Yeah. And you know, the idea of floating higher taxes for the rich, again, is something I said. They make that point, a similar point here, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. And that is, this is, for me, I said it this way, you're kicking the door open for Democrats that when they gain power again, and one day they will, then you told them it's okay, that even Trump agreed you should raise taxes on the rich. And again, as they point out here, well, if the marginal rate doesn't matter, then why not 50? Why not 70%? You know, and what you're trying to do is spur growth instead of cherry picking all of these things to appease all these different groups. This benefit for this group, this benefit for that group. When you focus on the marginal rates is when you win, when everybody wins. But the game has become, and they make the point here, that you've got a number of new Republicans in there that have to relearn something. Well, how do they relearn it? Most often, and quite unfortunately, by losing elections. If you don't get it right, then there won't be the kind of growth there needs to be.
And if you don't get the deficit under control,
then it's all for naught. You know, if we're getting to a point, one expert saying recently, the debt, the interest on the national debt, the interest alone could triple in the next several years.
By the way, Trump the other day on the increase, here we go. The problem with even a tiny tax increase on the rich which I and all others would graciously accept in order to help the lower and middle income workers, is that the radical left Democrat lunatics would go screaming, "Read my lips," the fabled quote by George Bush, the elder that is said to have cost him the election. No, Ross Perot cost him the election in any event. Republicans should probably not do it, but I'm okay if they do.
Yeah.
I'm going to play
By
both
the
sides
way,
of this
I
issue.
said the night before he posted that, they'll post it as, we're doing this to the rich so that we can help the poor and middle class.
But then says Republicans should probably not do it, but I'm
Politically,
okay if they
shouldn't do it.
It's like
He needs them to win the midterm.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, since the president last week brought up Hollywood and tariffs on foreign movies, haven't heard much about that since they said it. Now Gavin Newsome wants Trump on board for a national $7.5 billion tax credit, which means taxpayer dollars, federal taxpayer dollars going to bail out the movie industry in California. Yeah, we'll hit that coming up. I don't think that probably would go over well.
I'm guessing no.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. All right, so I know both you and I read the statement from the White House on bringing down prescription drugs. We'd all like to see that. No details at all. Not really much to comment on. In order to do, you'd have to have some type of price controls, and the problem with price controls is when you see it done in nations, you see the drugs that are extremely expensive, especially, you know, we talked about way back, this goes back about 10 years ago. It really goes back, maybe it's Obamacare? I think it was when, it goes back over the last 10 or 15 years. I remember the research that was done saying, well, in the United States, prescriptions are more expensive. You know, we should be able to get them from wherever we want as long as they're made correctly and pass, FDA inspection. But what they found out is countries that have price controls don't have the very expensive cancer drugs. They don't exist. You can't get it. I remember in Canada, for example, they were looking at it, the certain type of head and neck cancer. If you had it, the prescriptions that were available in the United States, the drugs for that are extremely expensive, because that's one of the problems. You can demonize the pharmaceutical industry all day.
Yeah.
If you wish to. Anybody can criticize it, but when you look at, the drugs that have been created over the last 100 years in this country, it's a miracle. It's a miracle what has been created.
Yeah.
The drugs that exist out there. Now, can I find fault in the pharmaceutical companies? Absolutely. But when it comes to, for example, how you would lower drug prices, if it only applies, because there's a great debate going on social media. Well, this is just Medicare and Medicaid. It doesn't apply to the private sector. I don't know, because there's no details on it at all. Right. You and I went through it. It's like, well, okay, fine. Executive order to lower prescription prices. It's fine. How do you do that? And then you start talking about shortages, and you start talking about, I know, for example, on one of the generics that I have for valsartan. One of the generics works for me, the other does not, which is because I have metabolic syndrome, which is the triple thing with type 2 diabetes, all genetic, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. I've never had the high cholesterol, though. I haven't had that part of it, but I was diagnosed officially with metabolic syndrome. Mm-hmm. And people who say, well, they just want you to take the drugs. Well, let's put it this way. When they took my blood pressure, what set them off, the doctors off, that all the doctors and a second opinion agreed on, because you hear that all the time. Well, diabetes doesn't really exist. You don't need the pharmaceuticals. Yes, you do. But metabolic syndrome, my blood pressure, just so you know what it was, because of my type 2 diabetes, which is under the umbrella of metabolic syndrome, 225 over 125, and it was fine 3 months before. And as both the doctors, because I got a second opinion, both said, the metabolic syndrome kicked off genetically in that 3-month period. But the last time I'd had a doctor's appointment, I remember going in because it's when I got shingles. Remember that?
Yeah, right.
And I, went into a local clinic and they said, you need to go to the emergency room. I go, for what? I'm fine. Your blood pressure is 225 over 125. That's stroke level.
Yeah.
You need to get in. And so, yeah, I mean, now with, now watching my carbs, working out, and, for the high blood pressure medicine that I have, valsartan, if it's the generic that works for me, at rest, which means I sit down for 10 minutes and relax and breathe heavily, 116 over, 62 probably is the average between, when I just totally rest. And other times, if I'm moving around, probably, 130 over 68, which is fine. Right. The other generic, like 15, 20 points higher, still below and still not in high blood pressure. And so different generics work, but the one generic there's always a shortage on it, even though my insurance company covers both. But you look at it, especially with Canada and their nationalized healthcare system, I don't know what the case is now, but so many of the extremely expensive drugs, for example, cancer drugs that have been created for like certain types of neck cancer that only 5,000 people a year get, but cost billions of dollars to produce. You need to recoup that cost.
Right.
If you can't recoup that cost, not through just what you charge for that, but through other prescriptions, you can't. Those drugs don't exist in the countries that are price controls. Now, I don't know how the president plans to do it, how wide, spread it is, so I really don't know where to go on it yet.
Well, and he mentioned, he brought that up in his post on Truth Social, promoting the fact that he would announce an executive order. He brought up what he called the excuse on research and development, and that basically that they pass that on to the consumer and everything else. And, he countered that basically saying, well, that isn't always the case. All right. Which tells you, it told me, everything about the post screamed price controls. Because in his first term, well, before his first term in 2016, when he was running, he talked about pharmaceutical companies and, he railed them. We're going to go after them. When he became president in the first term, he invited the big pharma CEOs to the White House. He said it was a very productive meeting, gave them a tour of the White House. They all said it was a very productive meeting. And there was a conversation that's been going on for a while, actually long before Trump became president. And that is the regulatory cost of research and development. Because if again, based on the post, it made it sound like, well, we're going to go after big pharma. If you want to have a conversation of saying we want to create a balance, and he talked about this in his first term, create a balance in the regulatory side that makes it less expensive for them to develop these drugs so that we can get lower priced drugs all the way around. You've seen companies like McKesson and others, pharmaceutical companies, who have reached deals with retailers like Walmart to bring the $4 prescription to Walmart and a number of the retailers. And those retailers, especially at Walmart, they know, first of all, it's, they want to, it's part of everybody's game is to bring prices down. You've got to be competitive. But also they know you drop off a prescription, you go shopping on the other aisles while you wait for the prescription to be filled. Mm-hmm. This is part of a larger marketing campaign, which is fine. But with the pharmaceutical companies coming in saying, we want to do this, they understand, too, the power of acting in good faith with the consumer, because they've had some massive missteps in recent years. That's a problem. One of the things that you see is with pain medications. That's changing in a big way.
Yeah,
there were regulations that changed it, but there's also policy that's changing it in the private sector because they understand they don't want to get sued for billions and billions and billions of dollars because people become addicted to a certain medication. There was a real rolling back of how those were distributed, dispensed, prescribed. And I tend to believe, in fact, I think what they're working on now, I've read something in recent months that really shows support for this, but they want to get away from, the addictive opioids when it comes to pain management. And they want to focus on, other things, other drugs that basically won't have that addiction attached to it because it won't come with that same characteristic. So I tend to believe those are, that's going to be the way of the future there, of how you stay in the game without becoming the demonized, which if you say, it's been given a name, big pharma, you say big pharma, in the populist world, people go after them, and sometimes they deserve it. If you come in, and again, based on the president's post of, they always claim it's the cost of research and development, and that's not true. And, we can, I guess, get into the weeds on that. I can't tell you. I have a friend who used to be an accountant for one of the big pharmaceutical companies. He's no longer at that company. He's actually at a car company now, dealing with a much different financial part of it, including imports and the cost of imports and tariffs. But I don't see the books, but we get it overall. We understand the principle of, if you're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars developing a drug that works, because the president also remarked in his comments, well, what about other parts of the world? They're getting drugs, much cheaper than us. Well, they don't get everything that we get. Now, the question would be, all right, could he open the door? Because that part of it made me think, could he open the door to international pharmacy companies being able to supply more to the U.S.?
Right. Because those are the two things. You open up the marketplace for that, or you put in some type of price controls. There's really only two ways to go at it.
Right.
Unless you're talking about the government bureaucracy in Medicaid and Medicare, that the bureaucracy is too big, and therefore that adds to the cost of prescriptions, down the road.
And I'm guessing imported drugs would not be tariffed.
If
that is the case.
Well, it sort of would defeat the entire purpose of it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But when you look at it, and there may be cases where, it's not the case with insurance companies. The president may be partially right, that it isn't just the research and development cost.
Right.
But what isn't wrong is what happens in the marketplace. And when you see the analysis that was done, this goes back a couple of years ago, of the cancer drugs that were not available in Canada but available in the United States, that's the marketplace telling you, fine, we can get you cheaper prescriptions. You just don't get these life-saving drugs that are much more expensive.
Right.
Because there are hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of cost, and only 5,000 people in a country get this cancer a year.
Right.
Which there's no way, even though those cancer drugs are extremely expensive for those 5,000, it still doesn't come close to covering the cost of the research and development of it. That's true in some cases. But how many, and how do you figure it out, and who's telling the truth? Well, when it comes down to it, is not the marketplace the one that's telling the truth? If you can't get the drugs, if they say, sorry, you don't get the drugs.
Yeah, on that level, yes.
If you don't, again, it's the marketplace truth.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the question would also be, because you and I go back to the cost of healthcare overall, not just pharmaceuticals. I think pharmaceuticals has been very, in terms of pricing, we can shop around, and now with apps like GoodRx, you can apply even without insurance. You can apply discounts if they have a discount available for it. Quite often, the pharmaceutical company doesn't promote it, but you can go to their website and they have a discount. My wife has one that would be normally $150 a month. It's $5 a month, and it's a coupon. You have to have insurance, but it's a coupon that they offer through their website.
It'd be interesting to see what, because I having, again, the metabolic syndrome, I have the lowest level of metformin, the 2 blood pressure drugs, and the cholesterol medicine.
Right.
And it's been consistent over the last 9 years,
right? Probably
between $20 and $22 a month with my insurance. That's my copay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the concern would be, and again, he didn't get much into the regulatory thing on the Post, but maybe he will when he announces it later today, or maybe this is part of the effort. If you're easing up on regulatory pressures that require way too long of a waiting period in terms of, because the waiting period on generics has typically been, and it, by the way, that starts day one on R&D. That waiting period starts, and if approved, then it applies with that entire time period. But a lot of people complain that that's way too long still, that you have to wait years and years and years, and when there's a more effective drug. And the question, would become, okay, well, how do you remedy that situation if it indeed is about research and development? Keep in mind, these are publicly traded companies, so, there's a lot that they have to discuss openly to the public because they have investors that they have to share with us. Now, it's not proprietary things they have to discuss, but the costs of things they have to discuss. So the question is, where is that balance? And if it's going to be open to international pharmaceutical companies coming in, then the FDA is going to have to approve that with each one of them to make sure those drugs are safe, that you're not buying something that's more dangerous just because it's cheaper.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Now, when I talked about we were talking about the pharmaceuticals and all that, and there's not much really can comment on the statement that Trump put out about the executive order, because we don't know if he's wants to open up, prescriptions worldwide to come into the United States, or price controls, or a combination of both. So it's tough because we don't know what he plans on doing. But we're just talking about the pharmaceutical industry and prescriptions in general. Just want to make it known that the medicine that I take, the prescriptions, are widely used. I mean, these are the, you talk about the metformins and the valsartan and my cholesterol medicine, whatever. The cholesterol medicine, for example, that I get. Now, my cholesterol was never in the danger zone at all, ever. But I couldn't get my cholesterol down under 122. Over 130 is bad. But it wasn't bad. It was, above average. I was below average. But when you're type 2 diabetic, they want it super low. I mean, super low. That prescription's free. Cholesterol medicine it's always been for the 9 years 7 years, because I wanted to see if I didn't need to take it for 2 years, and I just could never get it down as low as the doctor wanted, and I made that decision on that one. My doctor said the rest of them, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right. But when you but that is so wide. Apparently they view that, the insurance companies even view that as so beneficial to them for preventative.
Yeah, mine's free.
That it's free. You get it. You get that for free. So the total cost, like I said, normally is run between $20 and $22 for all my prescriptions, which of course I can handle. And for being a type 2 diabetic, that's life-saving stuff.
Right.
That's the stuff that and followed by diet and exercise and all that, and that's happy that my doctor told me a couple of years ago, you want the good news or the bad news, Gary? And I said, give me the bad news first. He goes, type 2 diabetes is going to kill you. I go, well, what the hell's the good news then? He said, you'll be about 120 when it does.
Yeah.
Go, okay, I can live with that.
Right. Actually, that's bad news. I don't want to live that long.
Yeah, I know.
119.
Could you make it? Could you make it 95?
Yeah.
Now, I may have a different opinion when I'm 94.
Right.
On that, but
119, you wake up going, oh, man, not this again. Really? Really?
I'm 119 and life's been too short.
Yeah. I'm going to go out for a jog.
Listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I found this interesting just over the weekend. I noticed, as in my travels, that it was all over social media about, Jen Psaki, I guess, now filling in for Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. And she took a whopping plunge in a key demographic area in the second show. It dropped over 50% from Rachel Maddow. What a ratings nosedive. And I'm chuckling the whole time because it was covered quite extensively. And I'm like, wow, okay, from the first show to the second show. And then I thought, okay, why has, if and you have no idea whether it will rebound, but if it's true that liberals saw her and then said, look, Peppermint Patty isn't for us, why was that? And I started thinking to myself, Jen Psaki's part of the establishment Democrats.
Yeah.
That if it does drop, because, again, it's all conservative influencers on social media talking about it. Oh, she dropped drastically from Rachel Maddow. Because Rachel Maddow, as we know, is viewed as not part of the establishment. She's viewed as the radical left. Jen Psaki is not.
Right.
And so I think that if it's true and it would remain consistent that her numbers drop, that just shows you how radical the Democratic Party is. And they're like, we don't want her. She's not radical enough. I wonder, I mean, it can't happen because she's a member of Congress. If my congressperson, if she decided, if Ms. Crockett decided to be on MSNBC, whether she would have good ratings. Because that's how radical left they are.
Well, yeah, I guess it's hard to know. My question would be, can she do her little shtick for an entire hour?
Jasmine Crockett?
Yeah. Or can she only do it for the length of a TikTok video?
Well, I love how she went up to the two women last week. They said, she came up to us and said, so glad you're here and you're so brave for doing it. And they said, get away from us.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Right.
You're up there criticizing. You're doing this whole thing, Trump or trans and everything else, and you're taking the side of it, and then you come up and say, we're gutsy?
Right.
So you're saying, what are you lying now or lying then?
Right, exactly.
When you lie,
Right.
what the hell's going on?
Right, exactly.
Do you think in liberal women there's some guilt that they feel that they have betrayed women in this cause and they are submitting to the man? Is in very liberal women that have actually wanted to reject men. You don't need a man. You don't need to be married. You don't need this. Where the man hatred in the radical feminist has been so great. Do you think there's a guilt trip as to the radical transgender movement and letting men decide what the definition of a woman is? Do you think there's some guilt in there? And would Jasmine Crockett, that because she went up and didn't apologize to them, just said how brave they are, and how great it is that they're up there testifying. Meanwhile, she's blasting them and takes the complete opposite opinion.
Right.
I just wonder.
I think it's that's a plausible theory. Also, that in their lives they get it handed to them by friends, family, and people they know. In this case, maybe even constituents, but really people that they admire. Which some are, her conservative constituents she doesn't care about. Clearly, there is something to this idea of. You get home. You and I have always talked about it. If we were holding office, at the end of the day, I've got to call my dad. At the end of the day, I have to answer to my family. And if I'm doing something that they know isn't true to my core, then I'm going to get it, left and right. And forget about my constituents. Going home for a town hall isn't going to be a problem. Going home is.
Well, you and I've always talked about it. The blatant lies from politicians that everybody knows is a lie. Everyone knows is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I've always asked the question before, because there is a perverted sense of awe that they can do that. And we asked the question, doesn't somebody in their family say, you're lying? Don't one of their close friends who may not be involved in their campaign would ever come up to them and say, you're lying?
Yeah. Right.
Because my friends would, and my family would.
Oh.
They wouldn't sit there and say, well, you've got your political and talk show host, passion, and it's part of your career. So, we don't want you to lie to us about things concerning the family, but if you're out there promoting in public absolute lies that make you look like a complete idiot and tarnish the family name, and that's okay with us, I can't imagine my family or my friends doing it. If I was lying on the air, not having an opinion that they disagree with, but lying so obviously, we'll give you an example. The borders are secure.
Right.
A man can be a woman.
Yeah.
They would say, shut up. What are you doing?
Inflation is good.
Inflation is good. Inflation is good, right? It's like,
but if you were, and you go down that list of just bizarre lies, but because, to be frank, everybody that's held office has lied at some point, has misled people at some point.
Yes.
And misleading is lying. There is the lying that, look, those jeans look fine on you. Then there's the lying. It could be your fat butt that makes your fat butt look fat.
Do the jeans make me look fat?
There's also, see, that's the problem. That's the problem you have with me. I'm going to tell you. But the problem is, trust me.
What are you going to tell me? You're not going to tell you.
No. She'll tell you that I'm going to tell her.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't want to bring her into it.
Yeah. No, it's but it's, and there's the, oh, no, Mom, that was the most delicious salted caramel turkey that I've ever had. That kind of thing. Then there's the, oh, no, this is going to save the planet. That man is a woman, like you mentioned. That man is a woman. The border is secure, those kind of things. Because when you're going against reality, when you're becoming delusional, or at the very least going against your own convictions.
I got one.
Yeah.
Calling somebody a Nazi or calling them Hitler.
There you go.
My family would call, why are you doing that?
Right.
You can say you disagree with them because I don't agree with them either, but you're basically referring to them and labeling them as somebody who has committed the genocide of 6 million people.
Right.
Why would you do that?
Right.
That's not you.
Right.
That's not you in your regular life. Why are you going to that extent and doing that? I would hear that from my close friends and my family without question would say, why are you doing that?
And the reason I bring that part up is because your friends and your family, the people closest to you, because they've got to deal with it from people they know. Hey, heard your brother or your son or whoever say this. Why did he say that? And, but even if that weren't the case for me, I'm going to get a call. My buddies that I've known since grade school in Del Rio, I'll get a text from, we're on a group text, and it's all the time. But they will hold court. And it's never not been the case. And of course, it's always in the back of your mind, but also, why is it that you serve? Why is it that you do what you do? This idea of becoming a superhero is a little bit over the top and delusional, but certainly you can start with, I'd like to help people. I'd like to make their lives better. I'd like to be in a role that I can serve in that moves toward that end. And I think with a lot of professions, there is that at the beginning, you have these big dreams and hopes. Oh my gosh, it's going to change my life. And then you get into it and realize, okay, well, it's not what I expected. And then you kind of move on from that profession. That happens in politics all the time. But while you're in office, I have to believe some of them on the left that have, espoused these delusional thoughts. Some of them believe this stuff, and it's what we talked about recently. They will go to the mat on this over and over and over again, stating the opposite of what is obvious to all of us.
Yeah. When things aren't, for example, things that are self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
When you take a position and it's like, okay, this is so self-evident, you're lying.
Right.
You're lying on it. My family would call me out. My friends would call me out.
Yeah.
Not for differences of opinion.
No.
Not differences of opinion where we all agree on what the facts are.
I think something is wrong.
Yeah. They go, what's wrong with you? And I would get it from my family. Don't tarnish the family name.
Right. Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't lie.
Right.
Because it tarnishes our name.
And don't hurt people by doing this. You're hurting people. By doing this, you're actually doing the opposite of what you should be doing in public service. You're hurting people. You're damaging people. And that's unacceptable. And we haven't, we get into the personality wars. We get into the social media personality wars. And we don't step back and focus on the big picture, which is the ideas that these individuals are espousing.
Right.
And we've talked about it for a long time. The people come and go. It's the ideas that remain.
Yeah, there's some political idolatry narratives out there, too.
Yeah.
That, well, this person said it. You don't agree with them. No, I don't. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you support this person?
Mm-hmm.
Not the person.
Right.
It's the idea I disagree with, and here's why.
Right.
Yeah, but you're supposed to agree with them because we're all on the same side. I'm on a bunch of different sides.
Right. Exactly.
That makes me a conservative. And that's why we wish to talk ideas, not attack people personally. Or I don't judge you because someone I admire has a different opinion than you. I don't look at you and say, why don't you agree with this person? I say, why is your idea different than this person?
That's the difference.
What do you object to this person's idea?
Right.
And it's not, because if you don't, people get, we see it. We see the political idolatry.
Well, it's like saying you disagree with your brother, but you don't love your brother.
Don't love your brother, right.
Of course I love my brother.
Right.
But, those are the things we lose sight of because we tend to follow the brand to the end in this social media frenzy, which, again, I have to repeat it, social media isn't real. It's not real life. It's not how we interact day to day with each other. It just isn't. And society, I was watching last week, I watched the Netflix documentary on the Oklahoma City bombing. And at the end, one of the law enforcement officers that was involved, he said, this community came together, and it was amazing to watch this after this happened. And it's still very much alive here today in Oklahoma City and in the entire state and region and beyond, people that reach out to help each other, and they don't even know each other. Well, that's our society. That's us, he said. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about that, interacting on a day-to-day basis, even outside of such tragedies and horrific actions by people that are evil. We are good people, but when it comes to the politics, we must live by the brand, die by the brand.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Does Hollywood need a tax subsidy? Which means, should taxpayers all across the country give Hollywood your tax dollars? Gavin Newsome, after the president came out last week and talked about want to investigate a 100% tariff on foreign production movies. We went through what that actually means, and we're not sure yet. Gavin Newsome jumped in and said he'd like to get the Trump administration cooperation to give taxpayer cash to bail out Hollywood.
Gary, speaking of which, this is just breaking news over the last 10 to 15 minutes. U.S. and China announced reduced tariffs for 90 days after the trade talks. Again, this coming across in the last few minutes. We'll get into the details after the top of the hour.
Okay.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I'm just chuckling because you and I had listened to this audio cut before from Harold Ludnick and the Secretary of Commerce, and we said, okay, is the pause on the tariffs with China coming? Yeah. Here's what he had to say yesterday. All right, here we go.
Tell me if this is wrong, that a lot of the goods that Americans are used to either buying or, getting easily will either be more expensive or hard to get. We're talking about beach chairs, swimsuits, picnic supplies, fireworks. Is this something that Americans just need to understand is going to be harder to buy?
Well, I think, look, the Chinese and our representatives are meeting now. So, let's just leave what's possible with China to what happens on Monday, Tuesday, and next week. But
And at that point, you and I heard that audio and we said, okay, the pause in tariffs. I don't mean in a negative way, but the pause in tariffs may be coming. And it was announced United States and China have agreed. They said they were going to have a joint statement. It went out already. They've agreed to a deal to slash reciprocal tariffs for now as the world's two biggest economies seek to end a trade war. Speaking after talks with Chinese officials in Geneva, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told reporters the two sides have agreed to a 90-day pause on measures and that tariffs would come down by over 100 percentage points to 10%. And, I still agree with what you said today. That's the Laffer curve of tariffs.
Right.
You sit there and say, we're still tough. We still want a tariff, but make the levels so low that it really, and have the carve-outs
on bigger ticket items or whatever.
Right, on bigger ticket items, but make it, when the Laffer curve, folks, just so people don't know what the Laffer curve is, well, you probably heard, what's his name from the movie? Oh, I got mind blank.
Oh, yeah, Ben Stein.
Ben Stein,
Ferris
yes.
Bueller's Day Off.
The Laffer curve is you can lower taxes and get more revenue to a certain point.
Right.
There's a certain point where it stops, but a certain point on the Laffer curve where if you increase taxes, you get less revenue than if you lower taxes where you get more revenue.
Right.
And so we're calling this the Laffer curve.
The Laffer curve of tariffs.
Of tariffs, where you can say we're still tough, we've got the tariffs on, but it really doesn't matter as much, and the other side doesn't object to it, and I'm sure they put their little tariffs on, but you can both claim victory at that point. So
there's not a huge, massive impact on the consumer, especially with smaller ticket items. But also, if you're going to, because if that impact isn't there, then behavior doesn't change, which means you can greater count on, if you're counting on this, that this is part of your goal is to increase revenue to the government with these import taxes, which is exactly what tariffs are. If you're looking to do that, then you want that level, that sweet spot that doesn't budge the needle much on behavior. Because if behavior changes, then the math you can't count on, right? It's going to be all over the place. If people abandon those products, they're not going to buy those products anymore. This is separate from protectionist policy overall of, trying to say, no, we want everything built here, which we've also heard that. But this, if you're going to talk about a revenue stream, then you want the least impact, but something that is still measurable. And politically, you still get your victory lap.
When it comes to China's, and I said earlier to start the show, I said, really when I saw the number, and again, I don't know whether it's a year or over a period of a decade, whatever, but that the stealing intellectual property rights from China, $500 to $800 billion.
Right.
That should have been the thing promoted all the time with that number out there. Because when you say a trade imbalance, it doesn't really mean a lot to people. When you say they're stealing $800 billion a year, you're making a point, and because you're stealing our intellectual property, and you're making a profit off that, and that's unacceptable. And I would even say that the 10%, because they're still talking about the fentanyl tariff, is still on also, but I would say the 10% is because of the stealing of the intellectual property rights.
Right.
And we're going to negotiate the whole, rest of the trade imbalance or whatever afterwards. You and I not surprised by this, and we had said this early on, that we still believe that the correct way to do it is get all of your trading partners together. You get Canada, you get Mexico, you get Europe, you get everybody aboard, you get the friendly countries of Asia, you get the countries of South America. You do all free trade agreements with them, and you all say, look, as you all know, China's cheating and stealing everything from us, and you isolate them.
Right.
You don't go into a trade war with every country because we may have the biggest economy.
Yeah.
But it's not bigger than the world's economy.
Right.
And the last thing you want to do is drive countries closer to China. The other thing is that we have said that there's a limited lifespan for tariffs on everybody because the consumer right now has never been more sensitive to prices since the late 70s.
Right. Yeah.
Never been more sensitive to prices.
Right.
And to sit there before you get any pro-growth or any continued tax cuts or any extra tax cuts that anybody could feel, and you jumped on this, even if morally right for China, against China.
Right.
If the public is against you because they put you into lower prices and prices go up for whatever reason, you're taking chance of losing the midterms, which we said, then you have to ask the question, what's more important, to put Democrats who haven't changed at all and their radical policies are insane policies into office, or to more slowly move on trade, maybe hit China harder, but slowly move on everybody else to get to that particular goal?
Right.
That's always been the question. And it seems as if after the president put in policies that were going to be damaging and a hit to the American economy and to prices, clearly, and I go back to Bill O'Reilly saying last week, he believes that the president was totally blown away by the stock market and how the bond market reacted in early April to the tariffs. And he believes that the president couldn't believe it had that effect, which is interesting. I don't know Bill O'Reilly, so I didn't talk to him about it, but I found that interesting. But the fact is, they've backed off a lot across the board. When you look at Canada, even Canada, anything that was negotiated after on USMCA is still in effect.
Yeah.
It's still just, really, you look at it, it's dairy and lumber.
Right.
But if there's carve-outs for that for the construction industry until America can beef up its, lumber production for it, they're carving out all across the board. There are so many carve-outs coming on all the tariffs that are left that it's like, okay, is it just a symbolic victory while you work on negotiations? Because what we can see here is that what you have, there was no trade deal with China.
Right.
There is no.
That would take a long time.
Right. There is an agreement to set up an infrastructure for negotiations.
Right. You reached a deal on lowering the tariffs. That's just an agreement that's temporary.
Right. But
but that's not a trade deal.
Right. You don't have the trade deal done.
Right. And that's one thing Ambassador Greer kept repeating yesterday was deal, deal, deal. And which I thought as, well, of course that didn't happen with 2 days in Geneva. He's probably talking about lowering the tariffs, which has been floating around. I told you during a break earlier, when the president floated the 80% number, lowering the tariffs from 125 to 80% on Friday, I said, that was probably a trial balloon to see how the markets would respond. And would 80% be low enough? And then you come in with the big boom on whatever's going to be announced on Monday, because it had been rumored, the story had been going around, source stories, but it was pretty consistent and coming from a lot of different news organizations that there was going to be an announcement early next week, being this week, on lowering the tariffs to as low as 50%. And now we're talking about even greater. Because I think there's a couple of things here that we have to, I believe one of the greatest concerns, the enforceability of the, what'd you say? You just laughed.
I'm sorry. I just went to CNBC to look at the markets.
Yeah.
Dow futures up 837.
Yeah, which is about double where they were when we started our show.
Yeah.
On the Dow futures, and the same for the NASDAQ.
Well, because Dow futures jumps nearly 1,000 points after U.S.-China agreed. So they apparently went down and then went back up again.
Yeah, they've been going up and down. I've been watching them. But here's the game now. What's different than Trump's first term in terms of the enforceability of the intellectual property rights, of how you get China to be compliant and to enforce those laws in their country, I still don't know, because what is greatly complicating everything is the advent of AI. And I think it was a good move in requiring NVIDIA to have a permit required for selling their H2O, I was actually joking about that. The H20 chip, it's not water. It's the H20 chip to China. That basically they have to go through that and tell the U.S. government, you're basically keeping the U.S. government apprised as to what you're doing, the business you're doing with China. That the CEO of NVIDIA actually said recently, too, that Huawei, the Chinese company, AI company, is a formidable company. And I had been wondering in my mind, because I think it has to be a great concern. It's a national security concern of how far along China is in the AI game. We have to know this, and there are things that Intel isn't going to bring about because they keep it fairly tight in China. And so there are things you can learn and things you can't learn, and it's also evolving very quickly. AI technology overall is evolving, so their ability is evolving. The point being is that I think we're going to have some great concerns beyond intellectual property rights, which would apply to AI as well with China, but it's also going to be overall that AI ability of them being able to monitor us or any of our allies, being able to manipulate markets, being able to manipulate whatever in terms of AI and do that secretly. And that, I think, has to be a great concern. The only approach in that case is the old adage of, you keep your friends close, your enemies closer, and you build out this amenable situation. I don't know if trade actually does that. I can't tell you. And I can't tell you how great the concern is by the United States in regards to what the ability long-term of China might be or the threat might be from China when it comes to AI is. I really don't know. But in my mind, I have to believe that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest threats when it comes to national defense.
The CIA has their projections, I'm sure.
I think that they do.
If you want to find out what they believe, they probably have white papers on that.
And you have to assume the worst. What you don't know, whatever puts you in the dark, that lack of information must send you to the far corners to say we have to assume the worst, right?
Right.
We have to protect ourselves as if the worst would be the case. So I am very curious, but that's one of the things that changes the game, including trade, because trade is also about national defense. And I think it has to be a great concern. I know it is with President Trump, because I think he's greatly concerned about national defense altogether. We know we all want the same thing. Methods may be different, ideas may be different, but there's no doubt in my mind that he wants to protect this nation, certainly for as long as he's president, but of course he wants that to be the case always.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hotshot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. As a result of the reciprocal tariffs being dropped, Eric just told me that we've just found out that the average price of a Nike basketball shoe has gone down to the previously reasonable price of $700
That's
a pair.
right. That's good news.
Yes.
We don't have. You only have to save up for 8 months to get those sneakers. That's good news. And an iPhone now will go back to its most reasonable price of, don't worry about it. It'll be on your monthly bill.
And fireworks on July 4th.
Yay.
Fire.
And Christmas lights, I guess. I don't know. Assuming, well, maybe you should go buy them now during the 90-day pause. Everybody now shopping. Okay, get everything made in China right now. It has the opposite effect of what you want for protectionism.
Well, that's what happened in March.
February. They did.
It was February
ramped
or
up
March.
buying imports.
Yeah, I mean, the imports from China skyrocketed in March.
Right. Yeah,
So
retailers wanted everything here for, so that they could have inventories, and assure inventories, but you kind of do the opposite of protectionism, at least for that moment, which may happen now.
I'm just glad there's not going to be any crap panic and I can go and get toilet paper.
Yeah, no, I think that's still going to happen. I just buy what's the biggest, the 48 rolls? 48 rolls. What's going on in your house is what I want to know.
Toilet paper is interesting the way they market it. I like when they go in and they say 12 rolls. I think it is it 12 rolls as great as 36 normal ones?
Yeah.
Go, why don't they just make all of them like
why
that?
don't just make the same thing?
It's
yeah. And then it makes you feel like you go to buy the normal pack. It's like, are you sure you want to buy the normal pack?
The president needs to talk about it. There's too many selections of toilet paper.
Well, and then it's like the two-ply. Two-ply?
Super
No, I'm going to save money with the half-ply.
Super mega soft.
Yes, exactly.
And then, no, this is to get the tough job done.
Yeah.
This toilet paper, it's like,
what's going on?
But is it
What are you
soft
eating?
too? It's like,
what are you eating? Maybe you should drink more water. You should probably start with more water in your diet. Yeah.
Now remember, all these things, are all workshopped in meetings. All right, time for a toilet paper meeting. All the executives are around here.
Yeah.
How do we make it better?
Right, exactly. Well, I like the Charmin has the bears, the cartoon bears, because does a bear go in the woods? That's actually where
No
it
way.
came from. Yes, it is.
Yes,
it
it's
is.
not. Really?
Actually, is where it started.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, now that I don't think we're going to hear a lot of talk over the next 90 days now.
Yeah, right.
On tariffs.
Right.
Because China was really the big one, except that they announced any other partial deals.
Yeah.
As we've said, you don't do a trade deal in 2 days. You don't do a trade deal in a week. Trade deals take, what was the USMCA took, year and a half?
Yeah, right.
Something like that. Because there's hundreds of thousands of moving parts.
And it took another year for the Village People to relearn the lyrics to USMC.
I know.
Well,
Look,
what,
folks, I have to deal with this every single day.
They do too. They're listening to me.
No, but I have to deal with.
Are you saying my part doesn't go over the air?
Well, no, I have to deal with it off the air too.
Oh, there's that.
Yeah. Like I get.
Well, consider yourself lucky. I don't know why you would, but it's just something that people say.
Well, now we can focus on the next 2 weeks because the big, beautiful bill is supposed to be done before Memorial Day.
Way to bring it back down. Thanks a lot, Gary.
Wait, well, let me.
Reality comes back.
By the way, I'm sorry. You were talking, in the last break, and I burst out. I interrupted you by laughing, but it was just because I had looked. I'd looked at the stock market and we just did the announcement, that there's a temporary pause in the reciprocal tariffs between China and the United States because they've got the framework for negotiating a new deal. That's what it is.
Right.
I mean, the framework is we've got the representatives here. Here are the topics we're going to discuss. And so, okay, since we're serious, both sides about negotiating, drop the tariffs.
Right.
Drop the vast majority of the tariffs.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't looked at the stock market. You said, oh, yeah, you can expect the stock market. You had looked at it and said it doubled. But I just wasn't. And I was just, as you were talking, I went to CNBC. I looked at it and I burst out laughing because it had gone up 400, 500 points in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And I went, wow. Yeah. That was I apologize. But it was like, okay, it had its intended effect.
No,
That's why I laughed.
I knew you had seen something that was that related.
And
but I really think again, on this, you're not going to hear much about trade for the. I mean, you're not. The media is going to ask questions all day today, of course, but there's really not much beyond the announcement in terms of answers that I would expect, right? That's not going to, you're not going to see that. They'll all be out there talking about it.
Except Navarro.
Except Navarro.
You made the point to me. You haven't seen him lately. That's all.
I don't know where he is, but he hasn't been in the forefront. But then the idea, I think, too, is something you just mentioned, you brought up, and that is that the GOP needs to find that Laffer curve on tax cuts, which they're trying to do. And that's not going to appease the conservatives in the GOP, the fiscal conservatives. And it's also not, it doesn't work when you talk about things like the Inflation Reduction Act and things that should be a no-brainer, except you get the conservatives or Republicans in those red states that say, well, no, some of that money already came our way, and we don't want to roll that back, that in what they call investment. It's not investment, it's government money, green money going into even red states, and you don't want to mess with that. Well, then you're playing the Democrats' game. And I don't expect it to change. I don't expect them to do anything on the Inflation Reduction Act at all. It's just not going to happen.
It's amazing because if they can't do that, we never solve the problem.
And
if you're at this, we talked about the story of Texas, the legislation in Texas, that if you have a solar farm, you've got to whatever you produce during the day, whatever the average is, you have to produce that during the night too, which means if you're a solar plant, in order to exist, you need to have coal generation or gas power generation or nuclear power generation to back up what you produce, which means they won't be running all the time, which means you're subsidizing everything. That's insane. Yeah. And that's caused, in part right now, it's continuing. That's the worry because of the Inflation Reduction Act. If the president is against, as he has said, the continuation of solar and wind, and Republicans are against not solar and wind, the subsidizing of solar and wind, not giving them tax breaks that they make a profit, but giving them your cash to still eventually go bankrupt.
Yeah.
If they've been promoting that for years, then stop it.
Right.
And if Congress doesn't do it, the president should be all over their case saying, stop it. If you want to save the money, if you want to save, that's $80 billion a year over the next 10 years.
Yep.
$80 to $90 billion a year that you could put into tax cuts by getting rid of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Right.
Why are you hesitating? Well, because a lot of this money goes to red states. Well, okay, fine. A lot of that money goes to Texas. We don't want it.
Yeah.
Because the money doesn't come in to make a profit.
Right.
The money comes in to subsidize a losing proposition. I don't care if somebody, if the Republicans' argument is we can help somebody who's got a failing business model, and then therefore they may vote for us in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then we're done. We are doomed. if that's the philosophy of the Republicans. Get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act. Get rid of it. Everyone knows it was bogus. Stop it. You don't hurt people getting any type of benefits at all. You can promote that fact. You can win that argument, and you won't do it.
Right.
You won't do it. Why not?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't make any sense, but it tells you where the political will is and is not. And it's maddening. It's, again, I don't know what they're going to get done. I don't know what they're going to get done in terms of tax cuts.
By the way, I mentioned the big, beautiful bill, and the stock market has gone down 700. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But, you know, when you talk about it, because we talk about the big, beautiful bill, is Newsom trying to get this tacked onto it? Gavin Newsom, after the president came out last week and had interest in, well, he floated a 100% tariffs on movies made outside the U.S. Now, we don't know what that would mean.
Right.
We don't know if it's foreign money, if it means any scene is out, and they haven't
actors,
and they haven't tried to explain it since that point.
Right. Yeah.
The president was asked once, I believe it was last Thursday, and he danced around it.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get to it. He says, "I just believe it should be made." Well, what does that mean? So Gavin Newsom jumped on it. Gavin Newsom hopes he can lure Mr. Trump to the press for a Hollywood tax credit. Gavin Newsom wants the White House and wants the Republicans in Congress to back him on bailing out Hollywood with $7.5 billion. It will strengthen domestic production and make American film again, Mr. Newsom said in a statement.
MAFA? Okay.
MAFA. Make America film again, not American. Make America film again. So Gavin Newsom, after Trump did that last week, wants direct taxpayer dollars to go to bail out Hollywood.
And how much was it?
$7.5 billion for Hollywood.
Or 3 Marvel movies.
Yes.
You know, the thing is that number one,
you can't sell that to the American public.
You can't.
You cannot sell that to the American public.
Because who was it that subsidizes the film industry? Well, it's the consumer. It's the American public. We decided, here, I'll make a deal with you, Gavin Newsom. You can earn more of my money, not my taxpayer money, but my money after taxes. Well, your friends in Hollywood can if they quit making crap.
Well, the Republicans finally, and Trump, with Trump's real help, really, but they finally got to the point of defunding NPR and PBS.
And we want to fund Hollywood.
And the next thing that Trump, let's bail on Hollywood.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no. No, we don't need tariff protection for Hollywood. We don't need any protection for Hollywood.
Well, the tariffs would be separate. This is
right.
tax credits.
I know,
Yeah,
but what Trump is promoting is tariff protection for Hollywood. I don't need any protectionism for Hollywood at all. They can fail and go away, and I'll be okay. And so will everybody else, with the exception of people that work in that industry. And they seem like most of them are smart people. I'm sure they can learn to code. The problem that you have here.
That'll become a Hollywood movie, Learn to Code.
Exactly.
Sponsored by U.S. government tax credits.
Exactly. And I have friends in the industry.
So do I.
And they have run into a number of problems, with studios over and over again. make great things, make interesting things, and people will watch it. That's how it goes. It's entertainment. Full stop. It's entertainment. And there will be something there to entertain us one way or the other. A guy showing you how to make homemade fishing lures on YouTube, or a $1 billion budget movie with superheroes from Hollywood. I mean, we choose that. We're the ones who decide what our attention span is going to be spent on, what our time is going to be spent on. It's not just about giving Hollywood the money. You know, it's this whole idea that, and I know where the president is. Look, we need those productions because if you bring a production to that town, Fort Worth said that Taylor Sheridan, who's a great writer and producer, Yellowstone, and I don't know how, but, Landman, a number of series that he's created over the years. It was some official in Fort Worth that said it was somewhere around I think it was $400 million mark that he had brought to the local economy by bringing those productions to the Fort Worth area. I don't have that math in front of me, but that's the idea. You want the production to be in the U.S. Realistically, is it all going to be in the U.S.? Well, I don't know. If you need to do an outdoor shot in Paris, hard to replicate in the U.S. There's one little place in Las Vegas on the Strip you could you could get away with it for a half a second.
We're in France.
Exactly.
I like that.
But it's that's the that's the reality of it all. And we have, in fact, movie companies right here in our backyard.
Yeah, we do.
And that's great and wonderful. But do we need tariffs on the movies? Now, having said that, you put tariffs on Hollywood and put tariffs on I don't know how, again, we don't know how it would work. Imported films, also not going to affect me personally. Because already I get Netflix for free. I'm already thinking about canceling it. I don't even pay for it. It's not, something that's on most people's radar. And people are willing to pay for it out of their own money if Hollywood does something right. Hollywood just has to get their stuff together on that front. That's up to them.
Make movies I like?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's about it. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Cronin. I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour. After our show ends, it becomes our podcast. So if you can only listen to an hour or two of the show, time constraints, you're going to sleep, you're waking up, whatever. You got to sleep sometime. If you can't catch the whole show and wish to, or catch certain hours, you can catch them all on our Red Eye Radio app.
That's right.
Yep.
We're always here for you.
Yep. And if you can't listen to us on one of our great radio stations overnight, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app.
That's right. We're always here for you.
Absolutely.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.